So the factors that are going to determine your cost of living in Kampala are basically housing, food, transportation, childcare, healthcare, education, where you shop from, your clothing, entertainment, and etc. So without wasting a lot of time, let's look at all of them in detail. Number one is the housing. Now, I'm mainly going to be putting my emphasis on apartment living, since that's what I mainly deal in selling. Yeah, and I'm also going to be putting out the prices in Ugandan shillings mainly, since the dollar rate usually changes. So you can basically compute for yourself according to the prevailing dollar rate. So you basically just have to multiply the Ugandan shillings with the prevailing dollar rate to get how much money it would actually be in dollars. Now, monthly rent in places that are deemed as desirable, or places that are not so far away from the CBD, they have quite decent housing. Now, that's looking at places like, let's say, in Tinda, Wukoto, Bugolobi, Chanja, Chisasi, basically such kinds of places that are not so far away from the CBD. If you're going to be staying in a studio apartment, monthly rent may actually be between 450,000 to 500,000, sometimes even 600,000 Ugandan shillings. And yet, if you're going to be looking at, let's say, a 2-bedroom apartment or a 1-bedroom apartment, still it may cost you between 800,000 Ugandan shillings to 2 million Ugandan shillings. Now, this range is basically depending on the different amenities that come with the apartment, or let's say how much space, how spacious is the apartment, or the distance of the apartment to the main road. So that is it basically about the monthly rent. And then if you're going to be looking at a furnished apartment, now with furnished apartments here in Kampala, most of the owners like to cost their prices in the dollars. So usually let's say a 1-bedroom furnished apartment, so it basically has a living room, dining, kitchen, your bedroom that is self-contained, and then you have security. It's going to come with Wi-Fi, and then all the other details that come with it. It may actually cost you $500. Now, this $500 into Ugandan shillings, that may be about 1.7 million if I'm using a dollar rate of 3,500 and or above. Yeah, so basically you basically have to range yourself between 1.7 to 2 million Ugandan shillings for a furnished apartment. That's for a month. Then if you're going to look at daily stay, like let's say if you're going to rent out an Airbnb, this may actually cost you about $20 and above for a night and day, let's say. Now, these rental Airbnb, I've seen quite a number of them in Bugolobi, and then there are also quite a number of them in Entebbe, because I think those are the places that usually get quite a lot of tourists that have the Airbnb and app. Yeah. Now, this $20 is about 70,000 Ugandan shillings, and so it could get even higher depending on the different things that are coming along with the Airbnb sleep over. Now, with hotels prices are actually very interesting. They get higher as you get closer to the CBD, and they also get higher if the apartment the hotel room is coming with quite a number of amenities. Like let's say if it's a large hotel, if it's going to have Wi-Fi, if it's coming with lunch and breakfast and etc. So basically, looking at all of those prices, usually a night stay in a hotel is going to be ranging from 250,000 Ugandan shillings to 600,000 Ugandan shillings. That's for a night and day, or even more. Yeah, so the 250 is basically for a hotel that is not so near the city. Maybe it's not coming with quite a number of so many amenities. Yeah, and then above. Yeah, so basically that is it about housing. Now, if you're going to be looking at housing, you also have to look at the bills, because while you're staying there, you have bills that you will be able to meet them whether you like it or not. Now, number one will be electricity. Electricity today in Kampala, most people are using the Yaka meter, where you buy just enough electricity as you need. Now, 5 kilowatts of electricity may actually cost you 20,000 Uganda shillings. So if you need more electricity, then you basically have to add more money. Yeah. Then when it comes to water bills, I think water bills are not as expensive in Kampala yet, because if you're basically using your water for basic needs, basically that's cooking, showering, washing clothes, drinking, and basically you're not using a lot of water in your house. Yeah, your water bill at the end of the month may not even go higher than 50,000 Uganda shillings. Yeah, it may actually be as low as even 30,000 Ugandan shillings, or even 20,000 Ugandan shillings. Now, another bill that you have to look at is Wi-Fi, or as we call it in Uganda, the data. Yeah, so many people actually buy data and they don't really use Wi-Fi. But there are also quite a number of people that use Wi-Fi. Like in a hotel room, you're going to have to use Wi-Fi, or at your home, you're basically going to use data. So it depends on how much you use. We have quite a number of people in Uganda that still don't even use the data, yeah, or the Wi-Fi. But if you're watching this video, then you definitely do need the data. So in Uganda, if you're using, let's say, it depends on also the network that you're using. So let's say if you're using Airtel Uganda, daily, if you want to buy 1 GB of data, that may actually cost you 5,000 Uganda shillings. That's just for one day. Yeah. But then we also have packages for weekly, monthly, and etc., depending on what you may see as desirable for you. Now, food in Kampala. Food, if I generalize it as Uganda, I would say this is a very interesting thing to talk about. Food in Uganda is quite a lot. We are blessed with quite a lot of food, so that means we have so many places in which you can actually get food. Now, if you're looking at food, some people do buy food from the markets, and if you go to the market, this is actually really good for so many people, because even if you had a small budget, you may not fail to get what to buy from the market. Yeah, so people could actually buy food from the market. If you had, let's say, even just $1, a dollar may be about 3,500 Ugandan shillings. You may still be able to get yourself enough food to cook. Let's say you could actually buy yourself a heap of Irish potatoes packed in a plastic polythene bag at 1,000 Ugandan shillings. That's about, let's say, 10 pieces of Irish potatoes. And then you could get yourself sliced cabbages at 500 shillings, 500 Ugandan shillings. And then you could get yourself tomatoes and onions, greens. You could get yourself ground nuts. You could get yourself the silverfish. You basically cannot fail with the market. So even if you're on a budget, if you went to the market and you're willing to cook, you would get yourself some really enough food. Now, we also have so many places in which people can easily eat out. So many Ugandans like to actually eat out. So we have places where you can basically get basic lunch. So it's a restaurant that is not so fancy, and lunch may actually cost you from, let's say, 5,000 Ugandan shillings to even 20,000 Ugandan shillings. That's basing on the location. If you're looking at a place still that is like the places that are closer to the CBD that I talked about earlier, lunch may actually cost you from 10,000 Ugandan shillings to 20,000 Ugandan shillings. And basically this is a full meal that has a full balanced diet. Yeah, so basically that is it. Then you can also get food from along the streets. Usually these have dry foods which can be kept for a longer period of time, like let's say posho flour, or let's say cassava flour, or let's say beans, or they basically have rice, so, or they basically have flour. It's quite a lot of dry foods that they're basically selling. So you could as well get food from these shops that are along the streets. We have quite a number of shops along the streets in Kampala. And we also have those fancy restaurants that are deemed as really high-class restaurants. Like, let's say you could get food from Java's, or from some restaurants that really have some good customer care, and let's say they have so many foreign foods. Now here you might actually have to have lunch that is basically going to cost you from, let's say, 35,000 Ugandan shillings and above. Yeah, so to get a plate of food, you basically have to have about 35,000 Ugandan shillings and above. So these are basically restaurants in which you could go in, let's say, for a date, or to basically have a good time. So most people actually like to go to such restaurants to celebrate like their birthdays and etc. And then we also have places in which you can get fast foods. Yeah, so we have quite a number of stalls in which you can get fast foods along the streets, or even from the supermarkets you could still get fast foods, or places like, let's say, KFC. Now usually with these you could get, let's say like in KFC, you could get a streetwise 2 at 15,500 Ugandan shillings. So you're basically getting yourself fast foods. In Uganda, we also have places in which you can get street food. Now with street food, this is somewhat tasty, guys. We have the famous Rolex, we have gonja, we have the roasted maize, we have the chicken portions that have been roasted along the streets. Now with these, they may actually cost you from even 1,000 Ugandan shillings. You could get yourself a Rolex, you could get yourself gonja at 500 Ugandan shillings, you could get yourself roasted maize at 500 Uganda shillings, your chapati at 500 Ugandan shillings, and then maybe the chicken portions may be a bit high because they may cost you 3,000 Uganda shillings. Why? Because Ugandans love to eat chicken. Yeah, so basically that is it about food. And then today, so many people are also doing orders, so you can basically order for your food online. You don't have to go look for the food. You can basically just use apps like, let's say, Glovo app or Safe Border app, or Jumia. We have quite a number of these apps from which you can actually get your food. Still, depending on how much or where you're buying the food from online. Now, healthcare in Uganda, or basically, let me term this together with the childcare. Now, childcare in Uganda may actually cost you from 15,000 Ugandan shillings up to 40,000 Ugandan shillings per day. Now, this also brings us to the healthcare. Here we have quite a number of public hospitals and private hospitals. Now with the public hospitals in Uganda, these services here are free because they are government owned. The only difference is that you basically don't have a more private relationship with your doctor. Basically you can't easily reach a doctor easily because there is a long line of people that are also waiting to meet him. So usually you find that you have to wake up really early so that you may go meet the doctor earlier. So these are basically cheaper. Then with the private hospitals here, they're more expensive because you have a more private relationship with your doctor. You can meet your doctor at any time. They always have all the drugs that you need. They're going to give you some really good treatment, and so basically here it's more expensive. I wouldn't say that hospital bills are cheap in Uganda because when it comes to the private hospitals, these are really expensive, so you have to be able to afford them. And then still, even in public hospitals, you find that, let's say, sometimes they don't have some drugs and they will recommend that you go buy these drugs from the outside. So if you don't have enough money on you, well, you might actually not have a very good time. Then you have quite a number of clinics along the streets. These clinics are found in most of the Kampala suburbs, so there are quite a number of them. These are quite cheaper compared to the hospital bills. So you find so many people actually preferring to go to the clinics. So it depends still on how the clinic is. Some of the clinics are high end and then some other clinics are actually low end. We have quite a number of pharmacies in which you can go and buy your drugs as well. So these pharmacies are not as expensive since you can buy drugs either in bulk, or you can actually be able to buy just the enough drugs as you need. Today we can also buy drugs from supermarkets. The drugs in supermarkets may be more expensive compared to the drugs at which you would have bought from the pharmacy. And also, if you want to do activities that are going to help you live a healthy lifestyle, like let's say swimming or gymming. Swimming in Uganda, getting a place that is a bit decent might actually cost you from 20,000 Ugandan shillings upwards. Now, depending on still where you want to go swim. If you want to go swim in a hotel, you might actually have to pay even up to 100,000 Uganda shillings. With gymming, a session or a day might actually cost you 30,000 Ugandan shillings and above, still depending on where you want to go gymming. So basically that is it about healthcare. Now, education in Uganda, I wouldn't say that good education, I must stress, is cheap in Uganda, because if you want to take a child to the schools that are deemed as desirable here in Uganda, they pay quite a lot of tuition. You find a kid in nursery school paying about 1 million Ugandan shillings or even more. You see, so and not so many of Ugandans actually earn that much of money. in Uganda here. So that's, I would say, good education is expensive in Uganda because we have the public schools and then we also have the private schools. So public schools pay less money and then the private schools pay more of the money. Now shopping. Well, shopping, I'm going to term this together with the clothing. Where you shop your things from is basically going to determine how much you're going to spend. Yeah, so basically if you're kind of person who shops from we have street shops. Here you might find things that are not as expensive, but also you could find them cheaper in the market. And then if you also the kind of person who shops from the supermarkets, you might find them a little bit highly priced. So the person that shops from the supermarkets would find things at a higher price, and in turn the person that shops from the street shops would find things at a higher price compared to the markets. So basically that is just how it is. And also if you're the kind of person who goes to shop in malls, you basically find things at a higher price as well compared to the kind of person who is going to find things from the places that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, so let's say if you want to buy your clothes from the mall, let's say like if you're looking at a cashier mall, here you're looking at Mr. Price, you might actually buy a cloth at 100,000 Ugandan shillings. And yet if you went to a mall downtown, like let's say Ham Shopping Mall, you'd find a similar cloth at around 30,000 or 50,000 Ugandan shillings. If you found it still on the street shops, you'd find it at 20,000 Ugandan shillings or still at 50,000 Ugandan shillings. And if you went to the market, you'd find something similar, just that it would be a second-hand cloth at Ugandan shillings, let's say even 5,000 Ugandan shillings. Yeah, basically that's the whole difference. And then some people also shop online. So with online shopping, sometimes it's cheaper and then other times it's also expensive. So it just depends. You have to know your market and play around with it really well. If you don't really know places, then it's safer for you to shop online basically. So but then I usually prefer if you go if you're basically there real time, you can look at the quality of what you're buying, you can basically test it and see if it is good enough for you or not. Transportation in Uganda is really interesting because we have both the public means of transport plus the private means of transport. Under the public means of transport, we have the commuter taxis, and then we also have the borders. Now, these are quite cheap if you're moving from, let's say, a place that is not so far away from the CBD. Here, you may actually be charged about 2,000 Ugandan shillings in a commuter taxi, and then with the border you might actually be charged 5,000 Ugandan shillings. So let's say if you're coming from Bukoto to Kampala city center. And then we also have the rental car services. If you're going to be doing a self-drive, here most of them do charge from 150,000 Ugandan shillings and above. And then we also have the special hire services. Here you basically have a driver that is going to be driving you. The price here is about still from 150,000 Ugandan shillings and above. Well, the prices vary depending on how far you're going to be going and also how many days are you going to be using the car. Well, luckily in Uganda today, we also have so many apps, so you don't have to, with these apps, you don't have to bargain with your driver about how much they're going to be riding you at. Now, for example, we have the Uber, we have the Taxify, we have the Safe Border. With these apps, the app will show you how much the range in which your ride is going to cost while you're traveling from one place to another. In turn, in case you want a more private way of traveling, you may actually need to buy, let's say, a car. If you look at the cars that are not so expensive, like a Premio and a Vitz, here you may need to have about 30 million Ugandan shillings and above. And if you're buying a car, that means you may actually need to know the fuel prices. The fuel prices in Uganda today have been so high, everyone is wondering what's going on, and they have been at 5,000 Ugandan shillings. If they go down, they have been going to 4,999. And that's it about transportation in Uganda. Those are the major ways of transport in which people move from one place to another. Now, entertainment in Uganda is quite interesting. So here, people in Uganda have so many places in which they can go get entertainment. Like, let's say if you're going to go to the movies to watch the movies, you're going to go to for a getaway somewhere, or you're going to go to have dinner, eat out, or basically you're going to just go to the club and let's say have a good time, go watch some cultural sites, or go to the art gallery, go to the comedy shows, or basically go watch a musical show where you're basically having a live band or something. So there's so many places in which you can be able to get your entertainment. Now the difference with entertainment is that it's not, I wouldn't say that it's quite cheap in Uganda. You have to have enough money on you to go out and entertain yourself. Yeah. So basically, if you're going to, let's say, go for a comedy store, you might actually need to have about, let's say, 30,000 Ugandan shillings for you to be able to enter, watch the comedy, and then basically also buy yourself something to eat or to drink, something of the sort. And then also, if you're, let's say, you're going to go over to the movies, they basically cost between, let's say, 15,000 Ugandan shillings and above. Yeah, so it basically depends. But if you want to have some really good entertainment, let's say if you want to eat out, remember the food prices that I mentioned earlier. So you basically have to know where you're going for the entertainment, how much it would cost you, but you have to make sure that you have at least enough money on the bag, enough money in the bag. So basically that's it about the cost of living in Kampala. When you're in Kampala, I hope you have got a very clear picture of everything. Until next time, bye.